several low points. People want to talk about the free SHS as a high point, but you see, again, if you're a parent and your child is in any of the public senior high schools, I don't think you'll be calling it a high point. If you're one of the 13 parents who sent their children to school in September or October of last year, and before December of last year, you had to visit a morgue to identify the body of your child
because
of the outbreak. I mean, look, the meningitis outbreak, and that is even if it is meningitis, because up till now the Ministry of Health has still not been able to identify what strain of meningitis it is. And that is why the ministry, even though we're told the minister has gone to Geneva to get vaccines, could still not do any vaccination. Because look,
have they not done vaccinations?
What vaccinations?
For the students. The students were vaccinated.
You have evidence of vaccination being done.
We heard in the media that.
Look, let me tell you something.
Tell me.
When the particular strain of meningitis that attacked the students, I mean, and the samples were sent to Noguchi. When Noguchi did it, those are not the same strains that we have seen previously in this country, in any of our senior high schools or the prison service. The samples were flown from here to Geneva, and that's what the minister went with. The minister expected that he would go to Geneva and get a vaccine for that strain. That doesn't happen that way. When there's a new strain of a virus or a bacterial infection, it goes through a 6-month minimum cycle of getting certification before you can actually apply it to human beings. And so as we speak right now, for whatever new strain it is that has come up, what they've tried to vaccinate people against was the H1N1. The two different things that broke out on the school. There was the H1N1, which is swine flu, that we have vaccines for. But the meningitis, which took the lives of the students in Kumasi Academy, is a new strain of meningitis. And the earliest you can find a vaccine on the market that would have been approved by the FDA and approved by the World Health Organization is in June of this year. And so we still have.
But that happened in 1 or 2 schools. Many schools we have where the free SHS policy was introduced.
We should be thankful to God. God is a Ghanaian, I always say, because I mean, if you look at the way the containment measures, and I saw a memo from the World Health Organization that was very critical of government's containment measures of the system. Okay, because I mean, and I had the case to take on the handlers of the president. The president and vice president were allowed to go into a contaminated environment without any safety clothing put on. I mean, yes, it's good for the optics. I've worked in the office of the president. It's good for the optics to see a president and his vice going to visit a school where there's an outbreak. However, that's the president of the country. If you're sending him there, you must make sure, because especially when you do not know what it is that is causing the lives of people, you need to take exactly. Okay. And all of those things were thrown to the dogs. But like I said, God is a Ghanaian. He always keeps us protected. Again, you realize that students were carried from Kumasi Academy, where the contamination had happened, when we still had not determined what it was, and they were put in a bigger medical environment, Konfanoche and Tech Teaching Hospital. I mean, these were all wrong medical protocols that were carried out. But
I'm interested in your alluding this to the free SHS, and my interest is in finding out how you'd have done it differently to avoid this if you were the one implementing such a policy.
Well, we started implementing what we call the progressively free senior high school policy, and this is not even up for debate, because on the floor of Parliament, the Minister for Education, Matthew Poku Prempeh, has admitted that there was a system of that case. He called it a scholarship, where 10,400 identifiable students who had been picked based on the data that had been collected by LEAP, which was to identify the most vulnerable in our country, had been put on a government scholarship, which is basically what a free senior high school is. What we believed under the NDC was what the Constitution says in Article 25, which is that you must have a progressively free introduction of the senior high school policy, which means that you will not have a system where you're having the overcrowding you're having in our schools today, because overcrowding is one of the accelerants for H1N1 and meningitis in any population. And so what we would have done was to ensure that we would have completed the schools that we promised. I mean, we promised to build 200 schools in 4 years.
Okay.
By the time we were leaving office, we had commissioned 123 of them. 77 of them were completed.
I see.
And you'd have expected that this government, which in its own manifesto had promised 350 schools, would have come in to complete at least the 200 that we started in the first year. What you see now is that of the 77 that we had completed, the shortfall between 77 and 123, which is somewhere in the region of about 4 to 6 schools, the contractors have been demobilized until an audit is carried out. So no work is going on those schools.
Okay.
And the 77 schools that we completed, so that nobody sits here and tries to argue out that figure, the government of Ghana has placed 1,500 students each in each of those 77 schools. You can check from the computer schools placement system.
Okay.
As we speak,
I guess you have a lot of. What will be your high? What will be your high?
Well, like I said, my high. I started with my high. My high is the fact that we've been able to, irrespective of all of these challenges, maintain the democracy that we have. I mean, bearing in mind that you've seen transitions in this 1 year period. You've seen military takeover in Zimbabwe. You've seen some turmoil.
Controversial anyway.
Well, I mean, whatever the case is, that there was a transition of power. I mean, the military stepped in because the cost of living was going up. If you looked at a bowl of king cake a year ago and a bowl of king cake today, clearly you see that there's a difference. But still, our military has stayed in the barracks, and so we're grateful to God that at least we still have the peace. And even though the peace we have is not the peace we used to have. Oh, I mean, if you again, and it is not always a happy thing to do this, but again, if you were a parent and your child was one of the children that visited the Kintampo waterfalls, and one of the 19 that died there, and you know that those children will not have been allowed to go into the waterfall if the trained tour guides were there, but the trained tour guides a week before had been chased out by the invisible forces of the NPP, who had no training. And so they were more interested in taking money, and those children went in there, 19 of them lost their lives. If you're one of those parents, you wouldn't be grateful, thankful, or say that we are enjoying the peace. Or if you were ASP Nanka Bruce, who in the previous government was the head of the police detachment at the Flagstaff House, an assistant superintendent of police. He was molested in the president's own home in the Flagstaff House. I mean, we've seen, I've had a number of my colleagues from the presidency who had their houses raided by brigands, bands of hooligans, wielding state ID cards. I mean, you had a regional executive of the NPP in the Brong-Ahafo region, abroad, leading soldiers and policemen to storm the houses of people. That was a complete breakdown of law and order. You saw the Ashanti regional coordinator of security, I mean, who is supposed to be responsible for security in the region, being beaten on cameras, live TV. And you saw a judge sitting in her court having to run for her life. We are told there was a pregnant woman in the court that day who lost her pregnancy in the course of the stampede. Yes.
I see.
These are some of the sad things that you see that have gone on in the country. But I mean, we're still grateful for 1 year of Ghana still being Ghana.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sam Jatta George. He's an honorable member for the Ningo Pram constituency, and he's our in-law, I understand. Okay, so Dumaga.
Yeah.